every single one of them has a vibrant color with it, right? And each one of those colors contains some amazing vitamin, nutrient, polyphenol, really rich nutrients that can literally transform your health.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. Our guest this week is Tanna Fox. Tanna is the owner and founder of Live Right Nutrition and works with Ampellis, a mental health entity specializing in human performance. She offers an incredible amount of knowledge about personal health and happiness using a holistic approach. Expect to learn the power of food, the importance of gut health, and the relationship between what we ingest and our mental well-being. Her counsel includes the importance of probiotics and a system she describes as eating the rainbow. We just scraped the surface of what Tanna had to offer. There was so much great information around health, nutrition, and happiness. We hope we can have her on again in the future. But first, we want to thank our listeners and hope you will rate the show. Leave us a quick comment, share with others if you find it interesting, and subscribe for future shows. This helps us so much so we can grow our audience. But now, let's get into the show with Tanna Fox. Nutrition and supplements have to be one of the most rapid changing because there's always a new opinion.
Always.
There's always a new marketing plan, a new formulation. I mean, you mentioned offline, like there's always a new idea and it becomes confusing if you're consuming all of it to know, is this just marketing? Are they really good at that?
Totally.
Or is this a product that's viable and it's important?
Colostrum, that's like all the rage right now. All that Armra. I don't know if you've even seen it.
Colostrum,
now that we've talked about
breast
it.
milk colostrum?
You're exactly right, but it's bovine. So there's a cow supplement that they're saying is really beneficial for your gut health. So now, I promise, now that we're talking about it, your phones are going to pop up with it.
Really?
But now they're getting bovine colostrum, and they're telling people to take it as a daily supplement to enhance their immune system.
And it's it's lactating, right? It's
from the cow.
From the cow?
Yeah, crazy.
What?
I know, that's what I'm saying. So there's always some new trend.
Yeah.
I mean, from intermittent fasting to coconut oil to MCT oil, there's always something. And so that's kind of why I'm like, I got to keep my finger on the pulse and just figure out, is this true? Or is this like someone else's opinion of a real researcher, right? And so sometimes you get familiar with the trends that are going around, and usually it's one source and people are kind of taking their own opinions on it. So
it just gets splattered everywhere on social.
And sometimes it starts from really great things like Huberman. I don't know if you listen to him. I love him. And
love Huberman.
Of course, Peter Attia and Mark Hyman and some of those guys. And they have great principles, but then people kind of expound on them, or like Stacy Sims or Mindy Peltz, like some of the female trainers and sports physicians and things like that. So I don't know. I just try to read it all and really distinguish. Like, I won't ever have a client put something into practice until I've done it for a few months. Same thing with my supplements. So my supplement list is really minimal. And like sometimes.
So you're the test tube.
Kind of, me or my husband or a couple of my clients. I'm like, will you try this with me? Or, whatever. But I feel like if you don't, then you'll just be on to the next trend. And trendy is the last stage before tacky in fashion and design. And I do not want to be that with nutrition.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the fundamental truths of really what's going to show results in human performance, not what's the best thing to buy because it's the latest and greatest.
Let's go back to this colostrum.
Oh, yeah.
I've never heard of this.
Yeah.
This is all, I mean, do you know quite a bit about it?
Yeah, I mean, I've had to dive into it. Absolutely. And so colostrum, as you know, like for the mother's breast milk.
Yeah, it's like the first week, right?
Exactly. It's like usually the first 5 days, and it's thicker and it's a lot richer in nutrients and peptides. And so it's supposed to enhance that first week and just kind of set a foundation for the baby's immune system. Sure. And so they want people to grab this same concept and apply it for themselves. But we're starting obviously in the middle of our lives. So what they're saying, it can go back and help enhance your gut health with the peptides and the nutrients. And, there's some healthy bacteria in there as well. And so from what I've understood, I actually bought some, of course. I'm like, okay, let's try this because I had so many clients. Okay, what do I need this?
Do you order it online?
You order online. There's one company that I think is the company that started it, and it's called Armra, Armra. And they now have a couple different flavors. When I found it, it was just one.
It's flavored too.
Flavored. Like watermelon.
Drink mix then?
It's in a little pixie, you guys.
Really?
Yeah.
Can I get a grape one?
So you're laughing about it. I assume it's...
Well, it just seems so weird because it's a colostrum. And if not everybody knows what colostrum is. But if you know, you're like, wait, hold the phone. What?
Yeah.
So, but I've seen a lot of success. And from a handful of people, like, you know how like in the summertime people do humanitarian expeditions, you're going to Africa or you're headed to the Philippines or somewhere where the nutrition, maybe the bacteria, maybe the parasites might be more abundant than you're used
so
to.
You're trying to bulk up your immune system.
That's the best time, I think, to use it.
Okay.
I've seen results happen really positively, but just using it in like maybe a 6 to 8 week initial stage, I don't know that it's something you need to keep going on forever and ever and ever.
Yeah.
So, but they have shown a lot of improvements in people's enhancements. And like there was probably a group of maybe 25 or 30 of one that I talked to and asked her every single day. I'm like, so you all took it and not one of them, they went to Africa, Mozambique and some other parts. Not one of them came home with any kind of stomach bug or issue.
Really?
Or like, you know, running to the bathroom all the time.
So is that, do you term that a prebiotic?
It would probably more in the category of a probiotic.
Okay. For gut health, to kind of allow you to, so you don't get giardia or you don't get these different things.
Yeah.
Is there, I don't even know about colostrum, but is there a human growth hormone in there? Is it protein rich?
You know, it has a little bit of protein in it, not a ton. There are peptides. And so it's mostly just a really nutrient dense form of a probiotic that enhances, and because of the properties of the dairy, of the bovine, it just enhances the collagen production, the way the gut, what's the right
holds
word?
Itself together.
Yeah, just kind of, it sustains it. Yeah. It strengthens it. So my daughter's leaving for the Philippines and I'm like, let's try it. I don't think you need it every day, but you have nothing to lose. Yeah. So she's been on it for 3 weeks and I'm like, notice anything different? And she's like, I don't think so. But again, this is.
But maybe it's like armoring it up.
That's what I'm hoping.
Maybe you don't notice a big difference, but
and I think that's why they call it Armra.
Yeah.
I was like, okay.
Yeah.
If someone didn't take that, what we're just diving right into some crazy stuff here. If someone was going to go overseas, or maybe someone's going to go on a mission, right, to somewhere where you know they're notoriously going to get sick. If they didn't take that, what would they take in an environment like that? Or what would you recommend to build that up? If
you weren't going to go colostrum, the tried and true route is for sure a probiotic. I love probiotic foods first and foremost.
Okay.
There's 3 probiotic foods that contain for the most part, the full spectrum of any probiotic found in a food. So it's called the trilogy, if you want to get fancy. It's kombucha, which I'm sure you guys have had before. Kefir, a fermented milk. Have you heard of that?
My wife loves it.
Yeah.
Brianne is going to love this podcast. She's going to eat it up.
Yeah.
Kombucha, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Kefir? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a mix between milk and yogurt. It's gross.
Exactly.
I think I've heard Brianne talk about
If you like yogurt, then you usually have no problem with it. But it's like a milky.
But like Greek yogurt. It's pretty.
Yeah, it's not like sugary. I mean, you can make it sugary.
Yoplait.
Definitely not a Yoplait.
Yeah.
But you can add my kids at home, we love to add like a banana and a little bit of Truvia or some kind of sweetener, and you blend it up and it's literally like a banana drinkable yogurt.
Okay.
I had a client once empty out all the little Dannon drinkable yogurts, pour them down the sink and fill them with kefir and then put the lids on them and for her kids to grab out of the fridge, and we had no idea. So it does taste pretty similar to a yogurt, but there's that, and then there's also just like a cultured vegetable. So kimchi, sauerkraut.
Oh yeah.
Those 3 foods contain probably over 90 to 100 different strains of good, healthy gut bacteria. And so gut strength isn't from like CFUs. You know, if you go buy a supplement from the grocery store, you're like, oh, buy this. It's got 50 billion CFUs. We'll flip it over and it might only have 2 or 3 different kinds of gut bacteria, right? Okay. Or healthy bacteria. It might have a lot of quantity, but the real strength in gut microbiome health comes in a variety of different strains. So kefir, homemade kefir can have anywhere from 30 to 60. Kombucha's probably got anywhere from 8 to 15, and then cultured vegetables, same, maybe 10
and they're all different.
To 15, and they're all different. Yeah. So that's why they say get a little bit of each of those, and you don't need a lot. Like kefir, it's maybe half a cup a day, every couple days. Kombucha, everyone drinks the whole bottle. You only need a quarter cup. Cultured vegetables is even less. You only need 2 tablespoons. So it's pretty easy to throw kimchi, into like a taco or some kind of, grilled barbecue meat or something. So that's usually the place I would start with, is a probiotic food.
Okay.
And then if you can't do a food, it's not for everybody, and it might be like just one thing you can't handle, then there's plenty of supplements too. But again, supplements might only have 5 at the most, maybe 7 different strains of a bacteria. So I'm like, well, try rotating them. Like if you're going to buy one and you like it, you'll know, your stomach will talk to you. You'll start to see some changes. And there's usually a detoxing period that comes because not everybody has a strong gut.
Yeah.
They call it Herxheimer, or like the die-off. Like, I'll never forget the day I gave my cute mother-in-law her first jar of kefir. This was probably 10 years ago. And she's like, Tan, I think your kefir was rotten. And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, well, I had to go to the bathroom and I had a little tummy ache. And I was like, oh, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
You're cleaning out and detoxing and fortifying your gut microbiome. So
that would help for someone who's going to travel.
Absolutely.
Is that just because our diet here is just not healthy, and people like the gut health is terrible?
It's terrible. And honestly, it's not that we have terrible gut health just by nature. It's because some of the foods, like artificial sweeteners, like an aspartame, right? Or NSAIDs, like any over-the-counter Advil, Tylenol, those not only don't have any probiotics, but they actually kill your probiotics, like even fried food. So if you're used to eating fried chicken and French fries, that also just kills any bacteria that you have living in your gut. So we're more in the lines of not just not having it, but we're also destroying any that we might have naturally. Because you don't have to have the probiotics to have, a decent gut. But if you're not having them and consuming those kinds of foods that are killing them, then you're in really bad shape. So there's a component too called a prebiotic, and the prebiotic feeds the probiotic. And that prebiotic is so simple. It's like a fruit or vegetable. It's anything with fiber in it, right? And then the probiotic's like, oh, I need to eat something, right? So the good bacteria feeds off of a prebiotic or a fiber. The bad bacteria in your gut feeds off of carbs and sugar. So when you're kind of craving a lot of sugar and you just don't feel well and you need more, energy, or you can't seem to feel like you're on top of your health, usually your gut imbalance is a little bit off, and the bad bacteria is kind of dominating your cravings, dominating the immune system, right? You might get a sniffle here and there quicker than someone who doesn't have a low gut bacteria diversity, like healthy environment in there.
So is that the advantage of getting, because it's such a buzzword right now, gut health.
Totally.
But in I question everything. So I'm like, why? Why do I feel fine?
Smart.
And whenever I say I feel fine, my wife goes, that's just because you don't know how feeling good feels. So when people talk about gut health, what are the benefits of getting your gut health right? Like, what's going to change? Are they going to be more cognitively inept?
Yes.
Or are they going to, you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Why do I take it? Why should I do this?
Yeah.
The number one reason I'm a huge supporter of really focusing in on your gut health is because your gut and your brain are actually connected. So they'll tell you that your gut is actually like your second brain. Like if you go back to Hippocrates or whatever, he says all disease actually starts in the gut. So there's a vagus nerve that goes from your intestines up to your brain. And that is actually what determines so much of your mental health. So 90% of your serotonin actually is produced in your gut. Like your dopamine, 50% also produced in the gut.
I did not know that.
So if you're someone that doesn't feel like you have energy, or the anxiety is rising so fast in America. I mean,
those
suicide's up. They're completely tied together. So if you can kind of start to clean up your gut health before you even run to a prescription, before you run to go take, another supplement or something, just ask yourself, am I eating enough prebiotic fruits and vegetables? And do I have some probiotics in my diet? If you don't want to try the fermented foods, right? Even just a regular Greek yogurt is going to have something. Even like if you have a garden, sometimes you can pull like a carrot out of the ground and just wipe it off. Those are microbiotics that are living in the earth that are on that fruit and vegetable. So it doesn't have to be like a complicated process. You can get really advanced, or if you have like an illness, like a lot of people that have Crohn's or IBS or severe acne, a lot of that also is related to the gut. So then you want to then seek out those probiotic foods to kind of help correct. But for regular maintenance and just improved energy and really mental clarity, I think is one of the greatest benefits of a good, healthy gut microbiome. I mean, now a day, I think everybody runs for a caffeine drink at some point in the day, right? Yeah. I mean, and it's just by habit, right? It's just by nature. But sometimes we have that energy slump, and it's like, well, it's maybe because our gut bacteria could probably be enhanced a little bit. So you have the natural energy that comes from food as fuel. It can be used in your digestion, in your stomach, and output better energy for your body and your performance.
That's interesting you say that, because I think for those people who are listening, I think people would pay so much money to have two things. Number one is clarity of thought, cognitive ability, and number two would be energy.
Totally.
And from everything you just said for the last several minutes, how long would it take if someone decides, okay, I'm going to change my eating habits. I'm going to learn about this. I'm going to really focus on my gut health, because that's what we've been talking about. So let's dwell on that for a second. how long would it take someone with a marginal diet, I'm not even going to say terrible, to really focus on their gut health and start to feel those benefits? Would it be weeks? Would it be months? Would it be days?
Honestly, I bet within a week you would start to tell a difference. Within 2 or 3 days, you'll see it or feel it like within your bowels. You'll be like, oh, something's happening. Something's moving around. Long term, they can say it can take about 6 months to completely reverse your gut bacteria because it's a slow process. But anything really worth getting is kind of that slow grind, right? But you will start to see changes as quick as 3 or 4 days physically. Mental clarity, I bet you'll start to see things as quick as a month, especially if you stay consistent. It's not every day because these probiotics are transient bacteria, which means they ebb and flow. So they kind of grow and they shrink based off of how much fuel or prebiotic they have. So if you're consuming probiotics and some prebiotics on top of that, you can keep a pretty steady rate of probiotics in your gut. Little by little, they'll turn over. And so within a month, you could, instead of craving like the Takis and maybe like an energy drink, you'll go to the grocery store and you won't necessarily crave broccoli, but you'll be like, gosh, I haven't had broccoli or asparagus for a couple weeks.
Terrible.
It won't look terrible. Yeah. Exactly. And then you're like, oh, my body is kind of telling me naturally what I need because my gut bacteria is actually starting to thrive and pick up and be like, this is what I want. And the big problem lies is when people don't have any gut bacteria, and because your bacteria in your gut needs to feed off of something, it actually starts to eat the lining of your intestines. Oh, wow. And that's what causes leaky gut, IBS, ulcers. all of these internal digestive problems that people want to fix and correct, like anything from, any gut disorder, right? And so you're like, gosh, just add a little bit. It doesn't have to be this whole lifestyle or nutrition change, just grabbing a little bit of kombucha, right? A little bit of yogurt.
How many ounces? Because that's an easy thing for someone to do tomorrow morning.
A quarter cup.
Quarter cup. Okay. And that's all you need each morning.
Honestly, every 2 or 3 days.
Just take a couple swigs.
Take a couple swigs. Exactly. Yeah. Well, when I'm having my lunch, and you know how you kind of finish up, like I need one more something kind of sweet. Kombucha's
that's a good
an
idea.
Acquired taste. It's kind of tangy. But when you have your food and your lunch, you've got probably some kind of greens, hopefully, some kind of fruit or vegetable in a salad, a sandwich, anything you're eating, ideally. And then it will have a little bit of food in there. So you can pick it up this afternoon and just start today, just changing your gut bacteria little by little.
And then go to colostrum.
And then if you're brave, we can go to colostrum.
I have a question for you. As we started prepping to have you come in, I'm interested in how you answer this. What do you think the number one, I'm going to say problem, but I'm going to say misconception with food is with athletes and in our country right now?
Oh, I love this question. Honestly, it's going to be very simple, but I think that people think that all calories are created equal, and they really are not. Especially some women or athletes or whoever is trying to refuel. Actually, for anyone, they're like, oh, I'll look at this hamburger and it might have 350 calories, right? Like, oh, that's fine. I'll just eat it. But that actually is completely different inside your body than if you were to have 300 calories of lean protein, vegetables, an apple or whatever it is. And so as people are trying to get healthier or maybe look at diet, we've got to forget about the calories and focus on the macros. Calories are not created equal. Like a healthy fat in an avocado is so different than a fat from a donut. But if you're a macro counter, which I'm sure I love macro counting. I do it. I have lots of athletes that do it, but they're not the same. So people will save up, and fats are totally created different. Carbs are totally created different. Proteins for the most part are the same, but proteins are so awesome because, like, for example, let me think the best way to explain this. Like if you were to get 10 calories in protein for your body, it would almost go into the negative and not even count because protein's so good for your body. You don't even have to worry about counting it as a calorie because your muscles just absorb it and use it and help, protein synthesis and regenerate and get stronger. So like if I have a protein shake sometimes in the morning, I would never even think like, oh, I got to count those calories, right? I got the protein. My body loves it. And so I think as we're trying to work on our health, stop reading calories and start looking at fat, carbs. Fiber's big. Fiber's not a macronutrient, but fiber can help reduce the carb load in somebody's body if they're, wanting a cookie or a piece of cake or something like that. So I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that we think that calories are created equal, and they're not. You can have 1,000 calories of junk food and 1,000 calories of health food and completely transform the longevity of your life.
That resonates with me because years ago, probably 2006, so 18 years ago, I did a really intense
regimen where I was really watching what I eat. I did this for about 4 or 5 months, and the amount of food that I had to consume was very clean. We're talking like boiled chicken, like very clean and very regimented. And the amount of food that I had to eat to get 22 to 2,400 calories was so much more than I would have anticipated. Do you know what I mean?
So
and my
true.
body would consume it and digest it quickly. And so, I'm assuming that my metabolism just sped up, and I was training at the time. But compared to, like you said, a donut or just some cheap stuff from the center of the grocery store,
exactly,
was not near the amount of food. It was just calorie dense, just garbage, junk calories. But when you start to eat healthy, it tends to get a little more expensive. To find the right stuff.
True. More time consuming for sure.
Yeah. That's an interesting answer. How do you teach people, or how do you get them over that and like convince them that, hey, calories are different. Like each calorie is different.
We always start out first. I mean, I like to always first start with, what are you already doing, right? Let's find if you're already eating something great, like if you're having a salad every day, let's keep that. So I always say start with what you're already doing, because nobody wants to completely change their lifestyle or their diet. And then let's find the good things. And then one meal at a time, let's see if we can swap out something else. So if you're usually someone that gets up in the morning and has like cereal for breakfast, and maybe like a muffin, I'm like, let's just start with swapping out and maybe having an apple and your muffin, right? And then from there, let's go from an apple to a protein shake instead of a cereal muffin. So little by little, just adding in more color is really one of the simplest ways. Like if you're someone that goes to grab a bag of chips at the snack, like as a snack, maybe even a bag of pretzels or whatever it is. I'm like, first, if you want the pretzels, fine. First, grab a handful of carrots and then have the pretzels. So the second you tell your mind you can't have anything, like if I was like, okay, you can't have any ice cream ever again, that's all your brain wants to think about is the ice cream. And then you might exercise discipline till a certain degree, and then you just cave and then you binge. And then you feel, and it's so much worse. And then you feel so bad and you're like, well, I'll never do it. And then people fall off. So it's always the small, tiny 1% better, the incremental steps. And then they start to realize like, oh, I actually don't need to grab the fruit snacks. I might as well just grab half a peach, right? Or grab a banana. So I'm like, take with what you're already doing and see how you can adjust that versus, okay, send me a meal plan. Okay, I'll go to the grocery store and now I'll start my half a cup of blueberries and my spinach smoothie, because you'll only do it for so long if it's not part of what you're really trying to incorporate into your life. And then it becomes non-negotiable. Like I probably bet you guys don't ever go to bed without brushing your teeth. It's just become part of who you are, right? But to a little kid, you have to remind them again, okay, did you brush your teeth? I forgot. Okay, brush your teeth. Like you have to keep reminding them, and then it becomes part of who they are. So I think just a little bit reminder. And if I found that if I buy the rainbow and that food's in my fridge, I'm probably going to eat it. So I'll buy like little boxes of blackberries or blueberries and I'll stack them up. I'll get like maybe 3 for the week. And sure, I kind of want nachos tonight or maybe a little chips and salsa, but I'm like, oh, I'm going to eat those blackberries first. And then I usually have less nachos than I was going to have originally if I went for those first. So it can start small.
Talk about the rainbow. You just mentioned it. And I want you to can we marinate on it for a second?
Absolutely.
What is that? Because even in your bio, and I've heard it mentioned before, but talk to us about what the rainbow is.
So I love all the food grown on the earth. And if you think about all of the foods that you can pull out of a garden, off of a tree, off of a bush, can literally prevent cancer, right? Orange foods, like if you have an orange like squash or oranges themselves, clementines, right? Orange peppers, they help your reproductive system. They help some of your organs. Green foods, like all sorts of green foods, are really good for your cardiovascular health. Blues are my favorite. Blueberries, blackberries, grapes, eggplants. Those are really good for cognition. So if you go through, I have a chart, I'll send it to you. It's awesome. And if any of your followers, maybe we can put on a PDF or something, but it's really awesome because I love to talk about these colors of health. So every day I try to just tell my little kids and my clients too, I'm like, eat the rainbow. And the food, people want to know, well, what's the healthiest fruit or vegetable? Like, okay, well, what should I go for the most? And I'm like, well, in a textbook, it's probably going to be maybe spinach and blueberries, right? They do have tons of really great properties. But for you, the fruit or vegetable you need is probably the one you eat the least of. So if you haven't had a kiwi for a while, grab a kiwi, grab a yellow pepper. Those are things that aren't usually as like apples and bananas and oranges. And in that picking a different color of the rainbow, there's more diversity that comes. it's like getting a multivitamin, right, at the grocery store.
Sure.
And it's kind of the same way with your gut bacteria to kind of tie that back into too. The more diverse different strains of gut bacteria, the healthier the microbiome. The more different colors of the rainbow you consume in your day, the healthier your brain and your body start to function. And your body can really absorb those nutrients really well and kind of know. And then again, you can kind of pay attention to some of your cravings and you'll start to see each one of those benefits really shine through. It won't happen overnight, right? Might not even happen in a week. But if you look back 6 months later, you're like, gosh, I really do feel like my heart, like I can run better because I've had spinach in my smoothie or whatever it is, you know? So I love this concept of eating the rainbow. Like just try to get a little bit of color and white.
Not Fruit Loops.
Not that rainbow or Skittles.
Eat the rainbow.
Eat the rainbow.
Skittles and Fruit Loops. I love blueberries, so that's easy.
Yes, it's so easy.
My wife will bring home blueberries and I'll just eat them by the handful. I love blueberries.
That's probably why you're so smart.
Oh,
it's true. It's really helpful.
What role, and this is old knowledge that's somewhere back in my head, the enzymes that you have to help break down food. I remember a friend of mine who wasn't a nutritionist, but he's involved, talking about how your body will use all its enzymes. Mm-hmm. And with this Western diet and a lot of carbs and breaking down breads and cereals, is there any truth to that? Or is that an old wives' tale that I'm remembering from years ago?
No, it actually is true. So all of our digestive systems contain these digestive enzymes. One thing to remember is that as we age, we lose digestive enzymes. So something like, I don't know if you remember when you were in college, like I remember very clearly, I could eat an entire pizza at 11 o'clock at night from $5 pizza, down by the U, and I was fine.
I'm glad you did that. Because you don't look like you did that.
I mean, back in the day, you're like, I have no money. What can I eat off of? Right? What can I eat? Right? But you could go to bed and wake up and you'd be fine. But now in my mid 40s, if I did that, I wouldn't sleep. I'd be tossing and turning. So I've lost some of those digestive enzymes. So we lose them as we age. But the foods that we eat that are fermented contain added digestive enzymes. So for example, let's take sourdough bread versus like a white bread, right? Because the sourdough has been fermented, what the fermentation actually does is it breaks it down for you. It already pre-digests that bread. So then when you go to eat it, it already is like, oh, I can do this way easier. Whereas just a regular white bread, right, has not been fermented. So your body needs more digestive enzymes to try to break that down. And so it's a little bit harder for your body, let alone white bread's not my favorite anyways, especially if it's from the store. But just to compare like kind of an apples to apples type of a thing. So fermented food already is kind of broken down and digested a little bit more. And that's why your body also loves it because it can absorb it better.
Okay.
So like almonds, for example, I'm sure you guys all love a raw almond, right? One of the greatest snacks. If you soak your almonds, maybe just overnight in a bowl, like I get at Costco, grab a bag of raw almonds, dump them into a bowl, 24 hours, or just the next morning, you'll see there's a bunch of like brown, yucky stuff around the water. Their almonds are healthy, but what we've done is we've just stripped the phytic acid and we've enhanced the body's ability to digest it better. Because sometimes wheat and bread and things like that are foods that are harder to digest. You need more enzymes. It's mostly because they have like this phytic acid that's covering it. So it's an anti-nutrient. So when your body eats it, it can't digest it because that phytic acid's in the way. So to kind of strip it, help it break it down, your body then gets 100% of the benefit of an almond versus maybe 45 or 50% of the almond benefit, if you had, as opposed to not having sprout or soaked it. Okay. So things like that kind of help. You can buy digestive enzymes, but it's true. They do help. Like,
does your body only have a certain number of enzymes and once you've smoked them, they're gone? Is there any truth to that?
I think so. I don't know. I mean, I know naturally it would, but can you enhance them with probiotic foods and digestive enzymes? Yes.
Okay.
But I think if you just had to live without any supplements or any kind of food, I think you would start to lose them a little by little. And that's why it becomes, sometimes people that are in the senior community, they just don't eat a lot. They just have a hard time eating.
Yeah.
They've lost so many digestive enzymes.
They eat dinner at 3 p.m.
Yeah. And they're like, because I got to let it all digest before I go to bed. They don't want that big bowl of food in their belly. Yeah. So for sure you will lose them. And so I think you can kind of keep up the maintenance of your digestion with probiotic foods and digestive enzymes.
So are you a believer of supplemental enzymes? Like
I don't take any, but I think I have a lot of clients that do because you wouldn't need the digestive enzymes if you were already consuming some probiotic foods.
Okay.
Right?
So maybe if you were going to sit down and eat that pizza at 9 o'clock at night, maybe it's wise to throw in an enzyme or two
Exactly.
with that to help. Okay.
Help digest it. Or honestly, this is the beauty of caring for our bodies in like a consistent way, little by little every day. Because on the weekends, there are times where my husband will bring home the pie at like 9:30 and I'm like, what were you thinking? Okay, sure, we'll have some, right? But then I'll eat it and I won't even worry about it because I already feel like my gut bacteria is fortified and healthy that I don't need to consume those digestive enzymes. But someone that's working their way up, or people that are really sensitive to gluten or dairy, they're really beneficial for them too until they can learn to help cultivate a better gut microbiome. Yeah. So there's definitely a time and a place for them for sure. Just kind of depending on where you're at in your gut health and how severe your digestion actually is, how many problems.
We're talking a ton about gut health, which I love. Can you, and I want to sit in this a little bit longer, talk about that mental connection between your gut and not just finding the energy, but the mental clarity. Are there studies that prove that? Is there science that backs that up, or is it just a fact that everybody knows?
No, there are a ton of studies, and I have been reading those. I mean, gut health is pretty new. Like, I think it really started to maybe 20 years now. So every day they're still studying and finding new gut bacteria. Like even just probably 10 years ago now, there's this new probiotic called the spore probiotic that some people are like, wait, what? A spore? You think of mold, right? Like that grows on bread or something on the counter, like a fast reproducing bacteria that's not good for you. But they just recently discovered there's a spore probiotic that they're putting in to help cultivate and reinforce your gut environment a little better to help it stay strong. So as far as studies go to prove the mental clarity, they're constantly coming out with new ones. There's handfuls. I mean, ones that I can think of off the top of my head just talk about how when you have a healthy gut bacteria, it allows for your body to basically function the way it's supposed to. Right. And so then if that vagus nerve is strong and clear and there's a connection, because all of your hormones and all that kind of stuff, anytime you eat food and all the good things that we want to get from food, it really is absorbed and digested all in your liver and your gut and that whole system down there. And so the mental clarity component comes in really strong because of that hormone. Like anytime you have, I feel like one of the greatest ones is dopamine, like we're kind of in this environment now of like wanting a quick fix all the time. We're so used to those dopamine hits coming in nonstop from our phone, from a quick food that we eat, like a gas station, right? Anytime you get something pleasurable, that's that dopamine drop. So we tend to lean towards trying to get that dopamine faster. But when you actually understand that real dopamine comes in a little bit more of a sequential pattern and you learn to let it happen in a rhythm and a pattern from real sources of nutrition, light from like being outside, right? And letting the hormones function the way they're supposed to, it allows for that channel to be clear. And that's really what the problem is. It's not that what's happening is when we don't eat properly, the channel gets clogged up. It gets cluttered.
The water gets muddy.
The water gets muddy. And so allowing, and actually like, it's not even being perfect in it. It's just kind of recentering yourself a little bit, maybe every day, coming back to something really good every day keeps that channel running clear so that you do have the vitality and the energy. And the thing that's so fascinating about it is you'll start to see it a little by little, but it's not just like you hit a point and you've maxed out. Like I've seen clients, myself, my family, here we are now a decade into this, and the clarity and the energy is only better. And your mind starts to work faster and things are enhanced and you can understand and hold more knowledge. I think there's a spiritual component to it sometimes as well when you have clarity and you're not bogging down your body with those kinds of things. But to stay away from that topic, there is physically actually that vagus nerve stays fortified and strong when it's fortified with the food and the nutrients that come from good choices in probiotics. And
so you're, in other words, and I don't want to put words.
Yeah, no, I hope I explained that. Okay.
No, you did. You're doing harm to that your vagus nerve and the being able to flow by eating poorly.
Exactly.
So to get it back to like where you should be, eating healthy, having strong gut health, things like that are going to bring that clarity up. But we're getting in the way by the way that we eat.
Exactly. Thank you.
You mentioned light. So circadian rhythm. I know you're big on that.
Yeah.
And Seth and I have both listened to Dr. Huberman's podcast. I know he's really, really big on that. Matter of fact, I listened to a podcast where he had on Rick Rubin.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And Rick Rubin I don't know if you listened to this, Seth, but Rick Rubin is big on red light therapy, which we have that in our house too, because my wife's into all this.
I love it.
And he's big on at night, all the lights in his house. And Rick Rubin's a millionaire, if not a billionaire.
No, he can take it all.
Yeah, he does, like, if he pursues something, he's going all in, right? Super fascinating guy, which I never anticipated listening to it. But he's big on red light, and everything in his home late in the day, maybe 7 o'clock at night, 7:30 goes to red light. Mm-hmm. He likes no bright screens, no bright lights because of that circadian rhythm.
Yeah.
And I'm in preschool when it comes to learning about this. So can you talk about kind of that whole circadian rhythm?
This isn't definitely my expertise, but I have studied a lot about it because I have a red light too. I actually use mine. I have like a face mask to kind of help with the,
Do you like the face mask?
I love it.
Okay.
I saw within 3 weeks of wearing one, I saw changes in my skin really fast. So I just wear the mask. I have had like a knee issue and I've wrapped my knee in my mask. Actually, I just stuck my knee in my little face mask. And within a couple weeks, I was like, oh, it really, actually a couple of days.
It works.
It really does work. Yeah. There is something to it. But what I love about the circadian rhythm, I'm sure cutting that out right at, what do you say, around 7 or so, it really does help because that's actually when your body wants to start to drop a little bit of that melatonin. And sometimes when we're on the screens.
Now you're getting into it. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, I'm not going to try to pretend to be the expert by any means in this, but from what I teach, I think that's the first thing I try to teach my clients is let's figure out what your circadian rhythm is, right? So we start with that first and foremost. And I say light because the best way to produce melatonin is light exposure during the day. It's not get it at night right when you need it, but that melatonin actually comes after maybe 30 minutes of being outside in the sun during the daytime. So you actually, like if you kind of just follow like a pattern of living with the sun in rotation, right? And you're outside for, at least 30 minutes, that sunlight outside on your face and in your eyes and on your skin, all that stuff, that sets the tone for how well your melatonin drops around 7 o'clock at night. So I'm sure he's just enhancing it by probably going outside, cutting out all the screens, dropping to the red light so that he has a really restful sleep. And it's wise because truthfully, sleep is king, right? If you have hormone issues, the fastest way to fix your hormones is a good night's rest.
Really?
If you're having a hard time, like, trying to find energy, obviously sleep helps too, but sleep is tied to so many things. If you have a hard time seeing results from weight loss, if you can't kick sugar cravings, you probably aren't sleeping well, right? Sleep is tied to all those things. So it's really wise to make sure you are getting outside, getting the right amount of light exposure, but then also turning it off at the right time as well. So there's something to that.
I'm fascinated by, I just forgot his name. The guy in Utah County.
Oh yeah,
I might have to look this up.
The guy who sold Venmo. He's trying to live forever.
Oh yeah, that
Brian Johnson.
Brian Johnson.
Chamber. Basically, he's trying to reverse himself. Reverse his aging.
Yeah. So he's
got like 10 doctors on retainer.
He's spending $4 million a year to try to live forever, or extend his life. And I've been following him or watching him now for a handful of months, and it's really, people think he's crazy and he's a kook. It's actually really fascinating. Is he over the top? For sure. But some of the things that he talks about is really, really interesting. And he goes to bed at 8 o'clock. Mm-hmm. Sleep is probably his number one thing. So when you said sleep, instantly an image of Brian Johnson popped in my head because he is all about sleep. He said that is the number one thing that humans are lacking is circadian rhythm and getting proper quality sleep. And he said, if I had a family and raised a family over again, we would get 9 hours of quality sleep every night from, when they're infants all the way through when they pass away. That's how to extend life. Yeah. It's pretty interesting.
It really is so true. Like I've seen it many times again, and I'm like, oh, sometimes I'll get a call from a client. Well, I've had a little bit of a rough spot. I'm a little bit stressed out. Okay, what's the first thing? How well are you sleeping? Well, I've stayed up a little bit late. We've had some projects. I'm like, go back to your sleep. You can't underestimate how important it is to get a good night's rest. And there's ways to enhance it. Cutting out screens 2 hours before your bed. It probably is one of the hardest things, to really try to do. Me too, even. I'm so patterned to do that. So I have to think of little tricks in my mind. How am I going to put my phone away? So I've even resorted to like watching a show. It's better than my phone, right? So I'll just plug my phone in at night. And if I just know I just don't look at it again, turn off all the lights, right? Like really cool temperatures. So he's so smart in that manner, at least just proving and supporting how critical sleep is for your health and wellness. And I think the biggest thing too is when you don't sleep well, your body doesn't function the way, again, it normally is supposed to. So people that can't kick the sugar craving, we've all been there before, but if you get a bad night's rest, your body just is trying to look for that dopamine. It's looking for a way to try to feel better quick. So it goes to the high sugar foods. It goes to the things
for simple carbs.
Yeah, exactly. Just to kind of quickly make yourself feel better. And so sleep is like one of the first things we always try to check. So
let me paint a picture for you. So if I eat terrible, which I don't eat great, I try to, but I don't eat great. If I clean up my diet for a week or two, and maybe I'm eating properly and I'm getting nice, round, everything that we've just talked about, but then I dive back into that pizza or that cold cereal, or I have a bad day, or I'm on the road, and I kind of dive back into the old habits. Why do I crave more food than I need when I do that? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because when I can get in a cycle for 3 or 4 days of eating healthy, right? I get my protein in the morning. I'll eat eggs. For lunch, I'll have, a salad or something healthy. At night, I'll get fruits, and really kind of focusing on the things that are within my control. But then as I fall off the wagon, I really fall off the wagon. And it's not even necessarily a binge.
Yeah.
It's a craving of, I'll be full, but then I still want more.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that?
So the reason that is because probably for the most part, that wave of health has not been long or consistent enough. So sometimes when you do go back to that, everybody will have a day where they're not going to eat well, maybe 2 days, maybe a full weekend, maybe even a week on a vacation, right? But however quickly you have to run back to it determines how healthy you really are. So for example, when you did that marathon, right? If you needed 4 or 5 days to recover, that tells me the health status of what you were before. But if you recover the next day, you were in great shape, right? So for example,
the gut's similar to your body. Almost.
Exactly.
Okay.
So a lot of the times when you go back to craving those sugary things, or you feel like you just gain weight, all of a sudden you're like, wait, I did so great for a week and now I get another week. Why did it gain all back so quick? Sometimes we forget that consistency provides results that allow for actually more freedom in the future. So if you were to stay consistent for maybe 3 to 6 months, you wouldn't go back to that as quick, because what would happen in those 3 to 6 months is if you started out with maybe lemon water, kind of back to doing something to clean your liver, or maybe some probiotics, you'd help your liver get really strong. Also, if you added in I'm sure you probably already do this, but if people were consistent with maybe 3 or 4 days of weight training, you would have a clean liver and some lean muscle mass, right? Built up in your foundation of health. And then when you went to have like a candy bar or a soda or some nachos or something like that, right? Your body wouldn't react the way it normally would, because for example, when you have a lot of good lean muscle mass on your frame, if you eat something unhealthy, let's say, right, your glycemic index spikes, right? Your insulin starts to shoot through the roof. But the first place insulin tries to go is muscle mass. And if you don't have enough lean muscle mass, it's like, well, all right, I can't go there. Let me try my liver. But if your liver's clogged from from eating too many preservatives or things like that, or unhealthy oils, your liver's just not as healthy as it could be, it can't really absorb it there. So then it just turns to fat. It's the last place it goes. Yeah. And so with that building up day after 2 days, 3 days of 4. So sometimes that consistency allows for more freedom later. Like for example, like I said, if you were to have that 3 to 6 months of consistency, you could go and eat the pizza and the hot dog and get the ice cream and probably do it for a whole week in Mexico and come back and be like, okay, that was actually a bad idea. Now I don't feel well, because your body will be out of its normal state. Yeah. Okay. And so it's kind of like...
That makes perfect sense. Because I started riding my bike a lot more this year, and I had gained weight. I wasn't like fat or overweight.
Yeah.
So I was like, I need to lose like 15 pounds. So I ate healthy for like 2 months, cut out soda, mostly.
Yeah.
Like in balance, like on the weekends or whatever.
Totally.
And then when I went back to get a soda, I was like, that wasn't as good as I remember it.
You're exactly right.
Yeah, you just don't want it as much, which makes it easier, but it's really hard for the first 2, 3, 4 weeks to, it's just like pure. Is there any advice to kick that instead of just pure like
discipline?
Because it's really hard to just straight discussion, like
just get
because then all you're thinking about is, oh, I want that Coke, I want that Coke, I want.
Just get on Ozempic, Seth.
Yeah, we should cover that. What are your thoughts on?
Oh, we'll get there.
What are your thoughts on Ozempic?
Oh yeah, no. Well, do you want me should I answer your other question first?
We'll answer that first, and then we'll go to the more.
So if I had to have someone help someone try to say, hey, it doesn't have to be just an all or nothing approach. I think that's what causes that yo-yo. Why you're on and why you're off, why you're good, why you're bad, whatever it is you want to call it. It's because they go all in too far.
Like you started this with saying just replace.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut
No,
you off.
thank
but
you. You're
just
exactly
adding
right.
in some things there and there.
It's
Sorry.
exactly what it is. And then when you start that way, it becomes part of your lifestyle. So it's not an on or off. It's just who Seth is, right? It's just exactly what you do. And then when you're contrary to that, then you can feel it. You're like, I don't even need that Diet Dr. Pepper.
Yeah.
Like it was once so gratifying to me, right? But now it's not even the same. It doesn't even taste good. You actually realize the caramel color is causing cancer. The fake sugars are actually killing your gut bacteria. And then you realize what's happening physically to your body. Your body can tell you exactly what it wants if you're in tune with it. And that's what I think I love about this advanced nutrition. Like I have clients that come back or those that are even just starting that want to learn more, they catch the fire. Then you start to pay attention to how your body reacts and you're like, oh my gosh, now I get it. Because it is not about an on or off. I think that's the worst way to look at it because every diet works and every diet fails. So it's not about the diet. Which one do I pick? Am I on paleo? Am I on Atkins? Am I on keto? Whatever it is. Sure, they're all going to give you results. But is it giving you a foundation of consistency for the rest of your life? And when you build upon that, again, maybe a little bit longer stretch, 3 to 6 months, you'll start to be like, oh, I actually don't even, like I'll go to the gas station. Like the last thing I want to pick is a bag of Cheetos. Yeah. Whereas in college, I was like, ooh, should I get the puffs or should I get the fire hot? You know, like
crunchy or puffs?
Exactly. So that's the beauty of just taking a tiny little bit day by day. And again, with this, it's consistency. It's not perfection. I think people think, I've got to follow the meal plan. I've got to do it just right. I've got to do this every day. I've got to work out and then I've got to do this. No, it's consistency over time yields the best results.
Like giving yourself leeway. Like
exactly.
You're out with friends on a Friday night, like have the Coke.
Exactly. If you're having chips and guac and you don't have a Coke, you're not eating chips and guac, right?
Good point.
And so that's exactly how life is meant to be, how food is supposed to be enjoyed. And when you eat good food with good people in that environment, it doesn't stick around because the endorphins are coming out. Your body's not worried. Am I going to gain weight? Or is this out of my meal plan? You just eat. Yeah. And you have the safety nets of more muscle mass and clean livers to kind of catch any extras that we know our body doesn't really want or need. And then you don't have to stress about it. And that's why rules and a little bit of discipline create bigger freedom, right? Like down the future. Like I think I always like to explain it like when you're going to fly an airplane, when you're in the airplane and you're sitting down, you have to catch a very specific speed, velocity, angle. The wing has to be just the right tilt, right? But if you stay there at that very, if you're 1 degree off, it won't work. But if you stay pretty consistent with that whole thing, you will catch flight and then you can fly anywhere in the world you want to go. But it takes that initial step of being a little bit more disciplined, just a little bit more consistency with better choices, right? And the next thing you know, you're like, I can have the pizza, I can have, the candy bar, the sodas and not feel like I'm stressed about it. But you can't one day on, one day off kind of a thing. So
it almost becomes the reverse effect. Yeah, you have it and you're like, oh, I don't want that again.
It's exactly
Instead
what happens.
Instead of falling into the Grand Canyon of
yes.
Yeah.
And then people think they're lost and they feel bad and I can't ever get back. I'm like, oh yeah, you can. You're going to be the same place in 2 years if you don't start tomorrow. So you might as well just start tomorrow and then watch where you'll be in 2 years with 1% better.
What role does anxiety have on the body's ability to I guess absorb the nutrients and just overall your diet and your body's ability to have a healthy gut, have the vagus nerve activated, have clarity, energy? Can we talk about anxiety and kind of how that helps or how that deters or what it does to your digestive system?
That's a really interesting question.
This is a selfish question, by the way.
It's a good question.
Because I think about with work and I know that there's so many men, myself included, you get into life and every day is not sunshine and lollipops. There's some anxiety with raising a family and career and things like that. And yes, you want to eat healthy and you want to be involved in your sport, but anxiety comes into play and it certainly has an effect on your sleep. Totally. I believe. Yeah. This is Steve science, bro science, so to speak. But I think it has a major effect on your body's ability to metabolize food, I guess is the best way I would put it. It
totally does. And I think that anxiety you're talking about has a name and it's called cortisol, which is the stress hormone. And so when that stress and that anxiety is high, that hormone cortisol is also high, which cortisol is the hormone that causes that belly fat, right? It's the one everyone's like trying to cut your cortisol, right? It's good. I have to say this in the beginning. It's actually helpful because when you get up in the morning and you wake up and you know how everyone wakes up usually like you're tired, right? No one ever just pops out of bed. Sure, you might get in the habit of doing that, but it takes a minute at least to wake up, But after you've kind of woken up and you're kind of getting
groggy.
ready to go, yeah, you're a little groggy. But then you kind of get going. The reason why you kind of get going is because of cortisol. It's the stress hormone that kind of pushes you a little bit out of your comfort zone. But what the problem lies is when it gets to be too much, and then you feel stress and anxiety, not just those earlier hours of the morning when you're waking up to kind of get you going, but then you still are carrying it in the afternoon, and then you're still carrying it even more in the evening, right? That is really an unhealthy hormone pattern to have, and that's really what's causing some of these pandemics. And it also is related to inflammation as well. So if you're stressed and your body's holding on to inflammation, they go hand in hand. Those two are the beginning of all diseases. So when we talk about dementia and we talk about some of these mental health issues that start small with anxiety, that leads to depression. Then that leads to chronic depression, and then even bigger and harder mental disorders to try to overcome. So if you're someone that feels like you have anxiety and it kind of just doesn't ever seem to subside, right? Like, how do I start to do that? The first thing I would always say is just, of course, check your sleep. How's your water intake? And how many colors of the rainbow do you feel like you're getting in the day, right? Because those foods in the earth have an ability to cut down and regulate your hormone patterns because they're all fortified with nutrients. It's so much better than even a multivitamin. Because like multivitamins, I mean, we could talk about supplements. That's $1 billion industry that people quite literally flush down the toilet. I mean, in the most literal sense, right?
Yeah.
And so starting with anxiety and all that, just again, I said this before, but one of the fastest ways to regulate those hormones would be to focus and prioritize sleep, maybe for a month. And if you prioritize sleep for a month and really then little by little add in a couple more colors of the rainbow throughout the day, I guarantee your anxiety and the cortisol hormone would start to reduce. Another thing I love too is just asking yourself, because when there's stress, there's inflammation. And like I just said, inflammation is the cause of all big problems. And it's also the cause of plateauing in your physical performance and things like that too. So asking yourself, where's my inflammation? Am I overworking out? Am I underworking out? And am I eating too many processed foods? Do I have a good omega-3 supplement? Some of those small little things you start to just build upon. And you're like, okay, oh, you know what? I'm actually missing that. That might be why my anxiety is high. But I'm really good at this and I'm really good at this. So sometimes it's almost like a little bit of a puzzle because everybody has a different outside stressor. Everybody has a different level of stress they can handle. Same way with like caffeine. Some people are affected by caffeine, some people aren't. Everybody has a little bit different level of how much anxiety they can have built on their resilience. There's a concept, there's this incredible book. You guys would probably love it. It's called Anti-Fragile. Have you heard about it?
No.
It's brilliant. There's this concept that talks about how, like, if you were to have a box delivered to your house with a glass plate inside, right? And it would say fragile. So you know, okay, don't drop that box. It's going to break if you drop it or it gets kicked or pushed or whatever. You ask someone, what's the opposite of fragile, right? And they would tell you, oh, well, it's strong, it's robust. And that's not quite the answer, because let's say there was a plastic plate in there that we think is strong, right? Actually, over time, if that plastic plate was dropped over and over and over again, eventually it would crack and it would still break. So anti-fragile is the opposite of fragile, because when something's fragile, it gets pushed or stressed and it breaks. When something's anti-fragile, it gets pushed or stressed and it gets stronger, quite literally. And there's 3 things that are anti-fragile that I'm aware of and that I've learned from this book. And that is 1, your muscles, right? Think about that. When you lift weights and you are stressing and pulling and pushing, they get stronger with the pressure. Same thing with your bones. Your bones are losing, their density. And when you lift and push and do like spine loaded exercise and things like that, and you work your bones, they get stronger. And then the third thing is your mindset. So when your mindset has some of that outside pressure and stress, if you can reframe your mindset to be like, is this tearing me down? Or is this is it a fixed mindset or is it a growth mindset? And so also sometimes just reframing, is this anxiety? Like, can I really get through this? Like, will I be able to push through? What's the solution? How can I grow through this? Then that builds and gives you experience to accomplish the next round of anxiety with even faster recovery, with even faster ability to see things differently. And so I just love thinking about how, of course, it's related to sports and fitness and athletics, but also our mental state too can have an anxiety type of a symptom that we can take a second. Okay, how am I sleeping? How am I eating? How's this going? And then also, why am I feeling anxiety? Like, can I overcome this? And how can I? Sometimes anxiety also is really, really intense because we're overloaded on caffeine. Caffeine actually, people think it gives them energy, but what caffeine does is it actually just kind of blocks their tired receptors so they don't quite know and feel fatigue, which then means you never actually have a minute to be calm, to feel like I can just be present in my fatigue. You're like, oh, the second you start to feel tired, you're kind of like, oh, I'll hurry and get my caffeine. I was addicted to caffeine for almost 2 years, and I just know the cycle. But when I go to caffeine, I never actually take a minute to resolve why I'm tired, or like if I have something super stressful or I have a lot going on, I take caffeine to kind of just push through, but then the next day it's still stressful. The next day it's still stressful because I've never actually dealt with what's causing the stress, whether it's emotional, whether it's financial, whether it's anything related, right? Anything in your life. So sometimes taking a step and cutting back, because caffeine also can just build up. It's really taxing on your adrenals. It causes that fight or flight, right, to come out. And when you do it synthetically over time, your adrenals like, am I ever going to get a break of this fight? I'm either fighting or I'm running. Like, am I ever going to calm down? And so sometimes I'm like, if there's a day where you don't have to have the caffeine, be present in your fatigue. Just close your eyes. Be like, hey, I got to go home for 10 minutes. I'm just going to rest. Or tonight's not the night for me. I just need to calm down. And then your mind settles. And then you learn how to get over that anxiety by actually dealing with it in the moment versus just pushing it off to the next day. And then it leads again to that chronic, acute anxiety leads to chronic, and then it leads to big time. Yeah. And the next thing you know, you're like in depression and you don't know why. And we're still grabbing, our caffeine for the day and things like that. That's just one component too, just something that popped into my mind. I don't know. There's lots of reasons. I hope I answered your question. I'm rambled there for a minute, but
that was beautiful.
Anyways,
what you just said was beautiful because I saw myself in a lot of that description at certain times in my life.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like I've lived, and I think a lot of people that would hear what you just said for the last 3 or 4 minutes, that resonates with them because we are a society that consumes a lot of caffeine. And now this is what I thought when you were talking. If someone has a death in their life, I've kind of been the guy to not go to him and say, dude, everything's going to be okay. Because it's not. It sucks. When you lose someone that's close to you, family member or friend, it's hard. And you should just sit in that emotion and be allowed to mourn for however long it takes. Absolutely. A week, a month, a year. It's not going to be better tomorrow. It just hurts a little worse, or it hurts a little less as time goes on, but it always hurts.
Always.
And I thought when you said, hey, if you don't need the caffeine, just allow yourself to kind of sit in it. And I've lived that where I've tried to get off it a little bit. And you're right. Like you do kind of come back down and are forced to look at things in your life in a weird way.
Yeah.
In a weird way.
It's hard to explain. There is, again, another spiritual component to that. I think they're tied closely without even us realizing how tied they are. And that's a key component of health too. There's 4 areas of health that we have to always check. Mental, right? Emotional, social, and then we've got the physical part that we also have to check, of course, lifting weights. We also have an intellectual part. Like how are we learning? Are we continuing to use our brain and stimulate? And then we have the spiritual side. So they all go to health. Like you can't ever isolate your physical health. You can't ever isolate your mental and emotional health. You can't isolate your intellectual health. They all are webbed together, right? So rather than try to attack one at a time and just all or nothing in it, little by little, consistent areas. I always tell my clients, hopefully I had, tried to have everybody do this, but like if you're going to work on these usually nutrition goals when we're meeting together, I want you to pick something else in the other 3 areas. Maybe you're going to start a new hobby. Maybe you're going to pick up a new podcast series. We can recommend a great one, can't we? Right? Something else that will also keep that balance in check so you can develop and acquire health as a whole, not just in one isolated area. And it will last longer and it will become, again, part of our lifestyle, part of who we are and what we've developed into.
It's a beautiful way of looking at it. Instead of just saying, hey, we're going to get surgical with this one area in your life. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk specifically about sports performance. Because we know you, Seth knows you from working with him years ago. And I know you work with athletes, not exclusively, but you work with a ton of athletes, high-level athletes. So if we switch gears, do all these same principles apply to those athletes, but you structure it differently? Or if someone's, a level 9.5 and you're trying to get them to a 9.8, or in their eyes, they want to be a 10, what approach do you take with those high-level athletes in sports performance?
Oh, I love that question. Sports performance is my favorite. First off, I have to say the biggest distinction between a typical client and an advanced elite athlete client is the level of discipline the advanced athlete already has. That's probably the biggest thing that separates them the most.
Meaning they understand themselves and their body?
Meaning they already have a level of discipline that they've acquired to allow them to already be an elite athlete to get
yeah.
to where they are. And 9 times out of 10, my elite athletes also have great grades. You had great grades, right? Like they also do really well in school. They're smart. They know how to just structure their lives a little bit. So that's the first thing right off the bat. And that's really why I love working with athletes, because it's not a babysitting game. And I don't mind working. I mean, I ran the weight loss clinic at St. Mark's for a very, very brief time. My dad is a physician over there. And that was the hardest part for me, because I was more emotionally invested in their weight loss than they were. And I was like, wait, don't you want to care? Whereas the athletes already care. And sometimes people just need to learn how to care. Like we talked about, learn how to know your body. So that first off the bat is the biggest distinction. But the methods for the most part are the same. Which I love. And that's why I feel like it's so easy to become a master in some of these methods. And once you learn to get one, whether you're an athlete or whether you go back 5 years later, they're all still going to be the same foundational truths. And those truths don't change, which is so great about any stage of health that you're in your life. But I think if there's an athlete that really wants to peak, or any person, a regular person that wants to really peak in their health, one thing to remember is that there's this pyramid of health. So the bottom are the basic foundational truths. And then as you rise up each level of pyramid, it gets more and more narrow, right, at the top. And at the top is where you actually have, as if you were to think about arrows pointing up to the top of the pyramid, I would write on the side of those arrows, diminishing importance. Meaning that the higher and higher you get up to the peak of that, they're diminishing importance because the results are just so small.
Minuscule.
But the things are harder to do.
And the things are harder to do. So if you're trying to shave off 5 seconds on your time, those diminishing important things are really important to you because you're already pretty much at the top of the pyramid. But someone that's coming at a basic level of nutrition, for them to worry about timing their protein with their fat and their supplement, it's very diminished in importance to them. And so it just kind of depends on where they fall on the level pyramid. Okay, good. I hope I can explain
that.
No,
makes total sense.
Okay.
Peter Attia talks about it. Like he was wearing AirPods in a video or something.
Yeah.
And all the comments were just blasting him for like, you shouldn't be wearing those because of all the EMFs and blah, blah, blah. He's like, you're sitting on the couch probably eating Papa John's right now. Like fix that first, because that's going to have a bigger impact on your health than not wearing AirPods.
Yes.
I promise you that.
That is so true.
Yeah.
And people are always like, what's the best supplement to take? Okay, should I take this or this? And I'm like, well, first you should ask yourself, can you do 20 push-ups? You know what I mean?
Yes.
I'm like, yeah, you can buy the most expensive supplement, but let's take a look at a couple other factors
Start
first.
working out, getting 30 minutes of sunlight, drinking a liter of water.
Exactly.
The simple things.
Yeah.
Do you find that everybody responds to different diet plans, different macros, different? I've read about like where your ancestors came from. Like if you're from Scotland, then a certain diet will fit you better. If you're from South America, more fats, more carbs, more protein. Do you know anything about that?
A little tiny bit. And what I will tell you that I do know is that actually what's more important is not your ancestors, but your current culture. So if you live in a culture where the food you have to buy at the grocery store is only X, Y, and Z, that's going to affect you way more than the genetics that you're carrying from your great grandpa. And so, yes, of course, genetics always play a role. But really, I've had someone explain, and I wish I could remember who it was, but they said genetics is like holding a loaded gun. You might have it, the bullet in the chamber, but it's up to you and your lifestyle, which is really what pulls the trigger. So just because you have those genetics doesn't mean you're naturally just going to be like that, right? Like that you can take twins. I think they did a study and then you can separate them and they can grow up totally different. And one can still be obese even though they have the same genes and one can't be. It's how the culture around you of food and exercise and movement is happening that determines what your health would be.
That makes sense. What about in Utah?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I've heard this so many times. I'll travel, whether it's back east and I've heard this from other people. People in Utah tend to actually look pretty healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that's a function of they're active here or they're more cognizant of how they're perceived, maybe a mixture of those two things. Like there's Chris Williamson has a podcast. His assistant is from Park City. And so he's been out here several times and he said, the women are so beautiful in Utah. And he kind of went off about it, like to the point like, dude, okay, we get it. Time to chill out. But it's true. We'll travel, back east, the Midwest, and people really tend to take care of themselves here. And I don't know if it's nutrition. I don't know if it's activity. I don't know if it's perception. It's just something to.
It's for sure in the culture.
It is in the culture, and that's why it took my thoughts there. Is there's something about the culture here, and I think a lot of it is probably perception, how people are perceived.
Mm-hmm.
Can we transition into some of these weight loss drugs and just touch on that a little bit? And we can talk about however long. Like you've got Mounjaro, you've got Ozempic, and I've heard studies that by 2026, the majority of Americans will have either tried it or currently be on it.
I know.
What are your thoughts?
Isn't that crazy? I always have told myself in my position publicly, I was like, don't share too much. I don't ever want to offend anyone. So, but I've decided over the last years that I think I'm just going to share what I know. I'm not a doctor. I can't prescribe anything. Obviously, I'm not professionally trained to give any advice in any way, but I have watched and seen, I have a handful of clients currently on it, friends also that I know that are on it. So I'll just share my own interpretation of what I think. I know that it's actually, people think it's new, but it actually is not new. It's been around for a very, very long time because it's meant for people with diabetes, right? Yeah. It helps regulate that insulin. So I think that definitely, this is in general, this is how I feel about it. I think that it can be an amazing tool in your box. It is not the tool to achieve health and fitness. And this is where I think it's hard to distinguish the line, because sometimes those appearance goals that we have are only skin deep. And if you're willing to compromise some of your internal longevity organ function, right? Like I know that some of the studies are showing there's thyroid issues. I know for a fact there's a ton of gut issues that are happening, right? When something synthetically is trying to mimic what your body naturally wants to do, there's going to be some kind of trade-off, right? And so if you're someone that is looking at it to just lose that last like maybe 10 or 15 pounds, but you're active and you're healthy, I don't know if that's the right route, right? But I also have to say on both ends of the spectrum, I have seen clients that are like, I just need to lose the last 30 pounds. And I think one of the greatest things someone shared with me is that she said it cut out all the food noise, which sometimes when we talked back to our beginning of our conversation, talking about gut health and how you crave bad, sugars and carbs when your gut health is off, sometimes to find a little bit of that discipline in the beginning is hard. So if it gives them a little bit of a jump start, because when they are about 30 pounds overweight, that is tapping into the realm of pre-diabetic, right? Things are not functioning well anyways. Yeah. So what's the trade-off?
Which is potentially worse.
Exactly. And I think it's always going to be better to try to cut down the weight and use it as a tool. So you know how they taper you up on those drugs? I always say plan to taper right back down. But as you taper down the drugs, taper back up your weight training. Yes. Weight training is the key to it's the fountain of youth. Again, we talked about how it creates a sponge basically for your insulin. So, and that is the key to longevity. I mean, I have emails that come into me from Harvard or Tufts University, some of these major universities from around the nation, and every single one of them for senior citizens, whatever, the geriatric community, lifting weights is the key to staying young and vital. And so I think that's the part that most people are kind of forgetting when they think their only option is to get on the shot. I'm like, again, well, are you lifting weights maybe 3-4 days a week? If you're someone that can't, right, or you don't have a hard time, or you don't know how, sure, get on it, taper up. But as you taper back down, little by little, learn to increase your weight training, and then add in healthy food choices, right? Use it as a tool to kind of eventually swap one lifestyle for another is kind of the in-between to get you some motivation. And I know that there's many people that have seen amazing results. And so it's hard to say, like, how do you trade off your self-esteem and your value? And that's kind of what you put your core value in. I always try to remind people, like, your body is not your masterpiece, your life is. So
well stated.
Be sure, to make sure you're not compromising something to
start living the way you want to.
Yeah.
Live. Because it's got to be hard it's really hard to lose weight the older you get. So if you're old, you're 100 pounds overweight, it's probably not very fun to go to the gym.
No.
Like you might be getting weird looks, whatever.
And it hurts.
So if that helps,
aches and pains.
If that helps you get the start. What's concerning to me is the 22-year-olds that are on it.
Totally.
It's not very hard to lose 20 pounds when you're 22.
No.
Just go to the gym for 3 months, 6 months.
Yeah.
That's what's concerning. People are looking for the Band-Aid.
And it's also, I mean, I don't pretend to get to know to any of this, but I also know that it's not really great on our economy, right? Like what it costs here. Like I was just reading, Mark Hyman just did a post on this too. He said that what we pay $1,300 for a month to get that injection, in Germany, it's like $59. In France, it's like $100. So it's literally costing our healthcare system. Like, we will be in so much trouble if this trend continues. And so even just looking at it from a long-term view of our country and our freedom, like, am I helping or adding or making the cause worse? I think there's just a wise way to evaluate, am I really a candidate, or do I just want the quick fix?
Yeah. A side note about the shot. I've heard so many studies, and you've probably heard the same ones, about clothing manufacturers are already like allotting less thread counts on the clothing that they're going to be producing.
That's amazing.
Airlines, and these are facts, like there's been studies about it. Airlines are already budgeting for less fuel because the weight of the passengers will be less, and the weight of their luggage will be less because their clothing. So all these things, grocery stores stocks have actually seen a decline because consumption of food in areas around the country and around the world where the shot is prominent, people aren't consuming as much food. And so there's a lot of interesting things economically, aside from the thoughts. And by the way, I thought the way that you described it and shared your thoughts was beautiful. I feel the same way. I wouldn't say that it doesn't have a place. I think that, like anything that has dramatic effects, it's, has to be used wisely.
You're exactly right.
But in Utah, I do think there's probably a percentage of the population that are abusing it, and it hasn't been around long enough in the public eye to see if this is going to be something like Seth said, where they are on it and it's like their new way of life. Yeah. Extremely unhealthy.
Well, and I think I cringe when I'm like, I see people on it. You obviously don't eat. So the number one thing you're losing first and foremost is muscle mass, which again is so contradictory.
Exactly. And we all probably three know of people who have done it. Yeah. And all of a sudden, like, dude, where did your muscle go?
Totally. Which means, where did their metabolism go? Which means, where is their, there is a trickle effect with that too. And so, and the face and the gaunt. And then I think what I was going to say is, I think sometimes I just cringe when I'm like, okay, they're on it and they're reaching some goals, which is, I'm so happy for anyone that's doing that. But then when I also see that the one thing they're going to go grab to eat that day is going to be that bag of Takis, I'm like, wait, just grab the apple.
Because the calories aren't the same.
Yeah, get the protein.
It goes back.
Your muscle needs protein.
And it goes back to they're thinking that it's about the calories. I'm like, the calories are not created equal.
Like you said, the number one misconception.
Yeah. So it's just that's the only part that makes me cringe. It's like, if you're going to do it to get healthy, then actually learn to be healthy. If you're just using it to lose weight, that's when we have a problem a little bit.
Use it to get you to where you want to be and then maintain it without it.
And it can be done. I've seen it done before. And that's why I'm happy for people that do have it, because they're swapping out some bad habits for some better habits and continually learning and growing and gaining more lean muscle mass. So anyways, hopefully that answered your question in a...
Yeah, I think it's a hot topic. I should probably correct myself. It's not easy to lose 20 pounds in 3 months. That was an incorrect statement, so people don't get mad at me. But maybe a year you can lose 20 pounds, so don't go for the quick fix when you can do it yourself.
You're exactly right.
It is hard, and Seth and I have talked about this offline. For someone who is maybe 10 or 20% obese, or they're whatever it is, 20, 30 pounds overweight, and they just don't, it's hard for them. Maybe they've fallen off the wagon, it's been a decade, and they want to get back. I get it. Like, I understand it.
I do too.
If someone's been a cyclist and all of a sudden they're in their 40s or 50s and they look at their bike and they look at the medals on the wall from 30 years ago and they're like, I'm not getting on my bike. You know what I mean? It's almost like, it's almost an embarrassment. But if they can have a little bit of a jump start to help them get there and have some proper education from someone like yourself to help them get there, I think that's so many people are just going about it on their own.
I know. And the one thing I have to say is, only get it from your doctor. They have a bunch of different like strip mall kind of boutiques or spas that are giving it out. I just finished reading an article about how awful those are, because they're not up to code. Some of them are diluted. So they're they're not at all. Like, so if anyone is interested in getting it, just go right to your doctor. I'm sure your doctor's happy to give it to you, right? Like, I have many friends that are like, my OB tried to get me on it, or my family practitioner. So the doctors are not being stingy with it, but just get it from the doctor. Do not go to some boutique spa, Don't
go down to Mexico.
Do not. Yeah, exactly. Like, just get it
it's
from...
not like buying Latisse.
Exactly.
There's I just thought of this. There's a British guy who's in the process of writing a book, and coming out of COVID, he put on some weight. He was quarantined and at home, and he went to a party. This is maybe in the winter of 2021, I want to say, so maybe a year into COVID.
Yeah.
And he went to this party with a bunch of friends to meet up, and they hadn't been together for quite some time. And he assumed that everyone would be a little heavy set, that they would have put on their little
and everybody gave
quarantine weight thick, right? He showed up. He was a little out of shape, had put on 10 or 15 pounds. And he showed up, and everybody was beautiful and thin. And that's when he started realizing that, oh, they're on the shot. And he started producing this, literature, and he's been doing all these interviews. And he said, for someone who's going to be diabetic or they're extremely overweight, the side effects, which, by the way, we don't necessarily know what they'll be. There's drugs that work, and then there's drugs that don't work, and then there's drugs with side effects.
Exactly.
That's just kind of how it is.
True.
He said, is it better that they can get that in line, or that they just stay thick? And, and so it's interesting. I'll do some follow-up to find out. But he's like, it was so weird. I showed up, everybody was thin.
And it really is true. And like when you see someone thin, like you automatically assume they just got on the shot. And you're like, oh, I wish that wasn't the assumption all the way. But nothing else is causing people to starve themselves that much. Yeah. And so if it's a fast change within a month or 6 months,
3
even
months and 40 pounds.
Yeah, that's scary. That's too fast for your body to even understand how to adapt to that. So I know.
I love the way, Tanna, that you describe life, that you're what did you say? You said it so eloquently, that your masterpiece is your life.
Oh, your life is your masterpiece, not your body.
Yeah. And if we just could have had someone like you when COVID hit educate America, I think we would have been a lot better off, because I think the country's in a weird place right now. A lot of the youth coming out of high school, I've got an 18-year-old. It's been a weird 4 years for this generation of youth, and even for some of the adults, and a lot of things have changed. And people don't necessarily have better eating habits today, and mental capacity and emotional, than they did 4 years ago.
No, you're exactly right. And I think that's the part that it drives me actually every day to keep getting up and to keep doing what I'm doing and to keep learning, because that's what we're missing is the education. I mean, they aren't even putting it in medical school anymore. Like I just have a friend that was in there, and I'm like, okay, so tell me all about your nutrition stuff. And I just am trying to quiz, like I had a chance to go meet with a dietitian at a big hospital, and the lead dietitian over a cancer place. And I was so excited. And I remember thinking like, wait, isn't there more to nutrition? Aren't you going to talk about not just adding ice cream to your Ensure vitamin shake? Wait, well, what protein do you recommend? Like I was so excited to learn. And I feel like sometimes it's not their fault, because the education and the information is not there. And if you're only shopping at the grocery store as someone that is interested in health and fitness, right? You don't know. You're just grabbing the cereal that says protein on it, right?
Yeah, so, you're not privy to all the different things.
And I think that's just how it is to let you and your goals control what you do and learn. Don't let your culture control and learn what you do. Like I remember, I think it was probably Huberman or someone that said, like, what's the worst fast food place that we could go to? And you start rattling off all these ones, like, oh, is it McDonald's, right? He's like, no, it's our school cafeterias. So it's those kinds of things where I'm like, okay, if parents can know, like, let's just pack an apple in your kid's lunch. And little by little, a kid's not going to like an apple the first time you put it in his lunch. We have to remember that, like, if you're not into it initially, it takes about 15 times to be exposed to a food before you actually learn to like it. Everything's an acquired taste. So just a little bit of practice, a little bit of consistency, day by day, just finding a place where will you meet your health that day? That was just something that was in my mind this last couple of weeks. Where today am I going to meet it? Am I going to meet it outside with my face in the sun? I don't have to exercise every day, right? Or am I going to eat it picking an apple instead of a bag of chips? Little by little, when we live it, and then we live it in front of our kids or our neighbors or our community or a friend, it can start to influence the way someone else sees health or their life, right? That it's not based off of their appearance or anything like that. And so I think that's one of the things that drives me the most, is just like telling people it's not an all or nothing. Just a tiny little bit, something every day will make a big difference. So it's one of my favorite things to talk about. Yeah, exactly. Just start somewhere. Yeah. Start what's interesting to you.
I know you're extremely busy, and we talked beforehand. You're involved with Brigham Young University, and what's the group again?
Oh, yes. Okay, so there is a mental health company called Ampellis, and I love working with them. They are the ones in charge of the BYU athletic department.
Yes.
And that mental health component. And they do such a great job. I think it's called, I hope I don't say it wrong. If I do, sorry guys. It's the Royal Blue. Okay. But it's a huge, big push for this connection of mental health and how it really does impact our society. And I get to come in and work and share, and we create nutrition programs to kind of help guide people every age, right, that has any kind of anxiety in their life, because it's pretty common. I mean, I don't know that there's many people, even from like, I have a 17-year-old, and I always am like watching, how's your anxiety level? Even my 12-year-old sometimes experiences it. And how do you know what's an appropriate level? How do you know when to intervene? How do you know when it's gone too far? And so I am so grateful for this company, because they are really on top of it and really trying to reach a broader audience. So it's been really fun to kind of connect up with them recently. And
how long have you been involved with them for?
Probably since the beginning of the year.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do people connect with you?
Oh, I try to do an Instagram account, because I know it's kind of, if you don't have one, then
you don't exist.
You don't exist. So I have an Instagram account. It's live.right.nutrition. And then I try to do a 1 tip a week. That's kind of my goal. I won't be super great at like entertaining everybody, but I'm like, if I can just give 1 tip a week, sometimes obviously they're always in the nutrition world, but sometimes they're a little bit more mental to like stay with consistency and stay with those things. But I try to, just share something a week, and maybe every 10 days or something. But it's...
Say that again. What's the handle?
So it's live.right.nutrition. My company's Live Right Nutrition.
I know my wife follows you. Yeah. And then your website for your... is liverightnutrition.com?
Yeah, .org.
.org.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's it.
Awesome.
And then we start to do through Ampellis, I'm starting to offer these nutrition classes. We just ran our first pilot one, and it was a huge success. We're so excited about it. So starting in the fall, we're going to be offering these classes all online via Zoom, and they're a 6-course workshop. And it's been my life's work, actually. The last 10 years of all my study and research, we've created a really beautiful program that has a workbook and an app. And so, because I was having a hard time, if a client wants to come in, I'm like, oh, can you wait 6 months? I just felt bad, because when I work with someone, I really want to work with them. I don't just want to filter them through, because that's how they see the most success. And so I refuse to kind of just pack them in. So this is a great way, and they've made it so affordable and such good content. I teach the classes myself. I was like, I love it so much. So
you have a decade worth of knowledge that you've compiled and are trying to...
And we talk about the circadian rhythm. I mean, it took a long time. And like I said, Ampellis was so generous and grateful or great to work with. And so I'm so grateful, because they've really allowed me to just take all of the stuff that I feel like is really important. So we talk about the circadian rhythm, we talk about probiotics, we talk about consistency, and just compile it into 6 weeks. And we've even had some great feedback already. It just ended last week. So
that's awesome.
It's awesome. Yeah.
People need somewhere to turn. Let's leave people. Can you give 3 things that people can change tomorrow after listening to this?
I would say find a place to grab a fruit or vegetable in the day. Just look at your day. Like if you go to a restaurant and they have veggies on the side, I take every opportunity to eat a fruit or vegetable. If I'm going to get the chicken parmesan at the restaurant, I'm like, bring me a side of broccoli first, right? Like that's one of the first things, is just find a place where you can have a fruit or vegetable. Start with 1, end up with 5 to 7. Next thing you know, you just love it. It becomes like a fun little game. That's the first thing I'd say. The second thing I would say would probably be to just work on your sleep and get a good relationship with your phone. I mean, phones are amazing. I love my phone. It controls and helps me stay organized, but you can overdo it. And so remember, you're in charge, not your phone.
Yeah.
You control your phone. You can stay control with that. And then, I mean, I think the last thing is so simple, you guys, but it really makes all the difference, is just drink your water every morning. Back to that circadian rhythm. You get up in the morning.
Told me that
yes, it is still one of my number one things, because you wake up in the morning, starting in the middle of the night, your body's starting to eliminate. It kind of goes through this detox like around 2 or 3 in the morning. So you wake up with like the crusty eye boogers, right? And the kind of chalky mouth and the oily hair. If you just guzzle, I always like to say anywhere from 8's the minimum, but 12 to 20 ounces of water, your body starts to eliminate and enhance.
Right when you wake up?
Right when you wake up.
It makes a big difference. I feel more awake after drinking a glass of water in the morning than drinking a Monster in the morning.
Absolutely.
100%.
And with hydration in your body, when you do eat those colors of the rainbow, the hydration is what allows for those colors to be pulled out of the food and pushed into your bloodstream, basically. So you can eat really healthy and be dehydrated and not see as quick of results. So water is really critical to pair with eating the rainbow and getting good night's rest and staying off our phone, I think.
So I drink AG1 every morning. Is that bad?
No, okay. I drink it too. I love it.
I actually think Seth's not a believer in it anymore. I try to give him some.
I did it for like 3 months.
It's actually
I didn't notice a difference.
Yeah, I did, but you're probably healthier than I.
Well, you probably have more digestive enzymes.
For me, it's a no-brainer. And it's not even necessarily digestion. It's actually mental clarity after.
Absolutely.
Like if I stop, I'll notice within a week to 10 days, something's a little off. You know what I mean? It's like, so that's the first thing I drink.
Then you know it's good for you.
Yeah.
Like, it might not be for everyone, but that's what I say about probiotics. I'm like, if you feel a difference, it's working for you. Everybody's a little bit different. So, of course, the methods will be the same, but you can tell pretty quick, like, when something's working for you or not.
Yeah, because it's sample size 101. Like, some things work for one person, they don't work for another, like you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
Tanna, thank you so much for spending
chat
time with
with
us.
I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much.
This has been
It's a
great.
great time.
Thank you.
Yeah, awesome.